Hello, everybody, and welcome today to our webinar. My name is Brendan Sheehan. I'm the CEO of White Squares and founder of CFO 2030, and I'm delighted today to have a very special guest with us, Jehan Perinpanayagam from Infomate. And Jehan is going to talk to us today about maximizing your return on investment in SAP. I've known Jehan for a long time, going back probably 12, 13 years now at this stage, and I'm very excited to have a conversation with him at the end of this webinar. But firstly, Jehan is going to run through a presentation for about 30 minutes. This is a recorded session, so if you're happy with that, please stay on and enjoy the proceedings. If not, take your leave. But yes, it's recorded and will be posted on YouTube and various marketing channels after this. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jehan and we'll kick off with the presentation. Jehan, over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Brendan. Thank you for the introduction and thank you all for joining. So my topic is an interesting one and it's something from personal experience and I'm keen to share some of the learnings that I have with you. So as you embark on the journey, it's obviously a very, very important. It's an expensive investment when you commence on SAP or on an ERP project. And you're obviously looking for seamless integration, reducing headcount through efficiencies, and those dashboards and the analytics, and the whole dream of press of a button. I remember we had this vision of having consolidated accounts with the press of a button. And then the reports, we wanted to analyze different aspects of the business and we had visions of these wonderful reports. The reality, though, is less exciting. Instead of seamless integration, we have incomplete integration, missing records, and large reconciliations between systems. And instead of reduced headcount, sometimes the reverse is true, where you actually are putting out requests for added resources. You have late hours, system bugs, change requests. Your time is spent in arguing with consultants about what should have been there and what is a change request. And instead of the reports, you find sometimes even the basic reports, your debtors analysis, your profit and loss statement, and you find a preponderance of Excel. Right? We have a joke saying the best ERP in the world is not SAP or Oracle, it's Excel. And then you have inaccuracies all across the board. You find you're collating information on Excel templates. And instead of the dashboards and the analysis, you find that you often abandon projects to get into big data and into the dashboards. Data can't be synced with line of business systems. And as for the press of a button, my personal experience is we are still looking for that elusive button. Golf. This was how the SAP project was sold to us 20 plus years ago, saying that all the finance people can then go out and play golf because you will have so much of time. We had many angry hours thinking about this vision as we slogged away at our work. So this is how it is often portrayed, and you invest in a Ferrari. But the reality is you end up with something that is far suboptimal. And my experience is that it's not SAP. SAP is a beautiful system, but it is often linked to how you implement it, how you use it, how you configure it, and your vision for continued improvement. Very few companies get there, and the reality is many companies end up like this old croc, right? Paid for a Ferrari, but they are not using even a fraction of the capability of this great system. And so here are some tips that I'd like to share with you. First, beginning with the implementation, right? So here's the big question: is there a return on investment on SAP, or is it a sort of an expensive dream we are chasing that doesn't really translate to rupees and cents or into dollars? So the first aspect is implementation. and then we will look at post-implementation. So here are some checklists of items during the implementation. You need to have a project plan that balances timeliness and quality. I've seen both extremes. Sometimes people take extensive time, or sometimes you unduly rushed. Senior management involvement is key. I remember when we implemented SAP 20 years ago, we had the group finance director closely involved. We had town hall sessions involving all of the finance personnel as well as the business. So it's not just IT. Everyone needs to be involved. Engagement of all stakeholders. Ensuring key deliverables are closely tracked. Now, in our case, it was the chart of accounts, right? That was the key ask of our finance director. And I remember he was after it very, very diligently. Mindful of automating inefficient processes. It's amazing how attached we become to some of our processes. And we want the same processes translated into the ERP. I remember having arguments myself with our consultant saying, I want this report in this format and nothing else. So challenge people to start thinking of what is the output they want and to be flexible with the formats and the design, because focus on the outputs will ensure that we don't spend unnecessary time and effort on nice to haves, right? Documentation is key, and it's quite shocking how often we fail to document the as-is, the to-be processes, the process maps are lacking. Very, very important to ensure documentation is in place. When you choose your consultants, look for people with local presence. Otherwise, once you start and go live, you found they're all over the world, right? They're in China, they're in other parts of the world, in the US, and you can't find them, right? Make sure that you have a strong project manager on your side as well. Look at the CVs of the consultants, because sometimes they'll pass on people with very limited experience. We found some of the consultants were actually learning from us, right? So it was really the blind leading the blind. Now, structure is everything, right? Invest adequate time to ensure that your profit center, cost center setups are in place, that your GL masters are in place, that you've given some thought, because if you get this structure right, your reporting thereafter becomes much easier. So deliberate, brainstorm, make sure you get the structure right, because these are your building blocks. This is your foundations. Get this wrong, and then it becomes a perpetual struggle thereafter. Right? So look at chart of accounts, look at your profit centers, business areas, cost centers. I'm using SAP parlance, but this will apply to whatever ERP system that you use. Remember, simplicity is best. Keep things simple wherever possible. Avoid complicating. Now, it's important to also manage expectations. People have utopian expectations, sometimes which is not practical, right? And the reality often looks like a jumble. Prepare people for a challenging time. I'd say that this is not going to be easy. You're going to have roadblocks along the way. It's going to be a lot of long hours. And also prepare people about reports. Like I said, don't get attached to formats. Be flexible on how your requirements are met. Be watchful on over-customizing the system, because then upgrades and so on become quite difficult as you go along. Manage consultants. They will often tell you this word standard. This is standard SAP. But make sure, whilst we listen to that and we respect that, make sure that you are getting the minimum requirements. There's a company I spoke to recently, very well-known company, and they've been told that for their industry, you can't get your financial statements from the system. You need to do it outside the system after extracting information from SAP. Now, I know a company that's in the same industry that's able to get all of their basic financial statements directly from the system. So there's no reason why this company should not. But they've been told by the consultants in your industry, because of IFS, the International Reporting Standard IRS 19, you can't really generate your financial statements, right? So ensure your basic outputs, including key financial statements, are thoroughly checked, vetted, you're getting it directly off the SAP. Ensure the system is stress tested for volume. Discourage change in consultants during the project. This is something that they will ask you. I believe our project manager who lives in Australia will also be a part of this webinar. Not sure whether he's here already, but I remember he got many requests from the consulting company. Can I replace someone midstream? Please discourage that. And end user training. SAP is a beautiful system, but it's not the most user friendly. It takes some getting used to. And this is where a lot of companies fail, because the users are not sophisticated enough. They don't use the system the way that it should. Right? If you're having a Ferrari, you must ensure that you have a good driver. And if you fail to train users, then what happens is that they do things, they take shortcuts. I found people who were not using the purchase order process properly, not using some of the very, very elegant features that were there in SAP. So then you end up with suboptimal use of your SAP, and you end up not getting the information that you require. Right? So training is important. Make sure you have town halls plus classroom sessions. Give adequate time for data migration. Ensure all of your data from the legacy system is translated into SAP. Right? So these are some tips at the stage of implementing. Now, once you go live, now you might tell me today, Jehan, all of my mistakes have been made. I'm left with this system that's a bit of a white elephant today. It's not doing what I expect it to. There is hope. Right? You can still change a lot of things. Of course, it's not as easy as doing it from day one, but post go live, there's a lot that you can do. So here's a checklist of some of the activities. Number one is make sure that you have you documented your processes? Do you have SOPs for each process? Have you standardized methodologies for data capture? Do you have user guides? Do you have metrics and process dashboards to measure your productivity, turnaround, key metrics, right? Do you know, for instance, how many supply invoices a person should be doing? Is it 50, 100, or 150? And your user licenses are expensive. So you must know the standards. You must measure this. Do you have quality checks and audit checks? How do you know the input into SAP, into your ERP system is accurate? There are some transactions like FB16 on PO invoices where you can easily add a zero. You can pay a wrong vendor. So it's important that you check the inputs and have a process to ensure the accuracy of your data capture. Remember, garbage in, garbage out, right? It's not the fault of SAP if you have garbage in. So these are some of the process maps that we have in our own organization. We've documented every process flow charts, and we've got SOPs where we go down to the level of screenshots and call outs. So every process is documented in detail. This becomes a great training tool when new people join the organization, right? Now, what often happens is you start off well, you've trained your first batch of users, but thereafter it becomes like word of mouth, right? Training. Someone learns from the predecessor, and that person then gets incomplete information, passes it on to the next person. Right? Make sure that it is translated through documentation, through a process, through a standardized training methodology to ensure that as you go on across the months and years, that you continue to ensure best practices and a discipline in data capture. Everything starts with the masters, your GL masters, customer, vendor, material masters. So is your master creation centralized with limited access, or does everyone have access? Otherwise, you'll very quickly end up with duplications. Right? Check for duplications. Believe me, if you have not looked at it, you're going to have a lot of duplicate masters. Right? Are there minimum master criteria? I did a check once to see who are some of the top vendors. I wanted to contact some customers, and we found that there was no customer contact information, no name, no email. Some of the basic information was not maintained in the masters. Right? So it loses its purpose. When is the last time you went through a cleansing and rationalizing exercise of your masters? Look at your GRIR, right? The GRIR is a clearing account which tells you the health of your payables. Right? What is the age analysis of your GRIR? We were approached by a Fortune 500 company, and their CFO said, I'll give you a test. I want you to help me sort out my GRIR. We had something like 15,000 line items there. They didn't really understand what was going in there. The age analysis was over a year. So look at this. On the flip side, there was a company that we worked for. They zero their GRIR before every month end closure. Right? Are your accounts, payable accounts, salary payable accounts, and other payable accounts zeroed and reconciled at least every quarter? Are your open item managed accounts, including balance sheet accounts, credit accounts, cleared regularly? Otherwise, you end up with a whole hundreds and hundreds of line items which are not cleared. You can't really then analyze these accounts. Right? So some basic things, but these will ensure the health of your balance sheet. Now we come to some of the best practices, and SAP has a lot of them. Beautiful system. For payment runs, you've got F110, which can collate all of the payment runs, a lot of intelligence that is inbuilt there. Then you have host-to-host integration with the banks so that your payments are seamless. Electronic bank reconciliations. In our organization, it's been hard work, but 96% of our recs are now electronic. Directly text files are imported into SAP. The clearing happens automatically. Are supply contracts used for your procurement? Now, this is another area you can really save a lot of money. I remember as a group, when we first centralized procurement, negotiated it centrally, there was considerable savings, even from items like water, from media purchase, stationery, computers. And we found different business units were purchasing these at different prices, right? So when we maintain central contracts and ensure that people only transacted with contracted suppliers, there was a big saving. Our capital expenditure budgets and your annual budgets maintained in planned versions in SAP. Right? This will help you to do your actual versus plan comparison and ensure your spends are within budgets. So if SAP maintains all of these, there's no need to go back into the spreadsheets. And look at controls. Right? Now there was the three-way matching for supply invoices. And everyone felt very comfortable with three-way matching. But we've later found that SAP had some flexibility built in where at the time of invoice verification, you could actually change your supplier. And a lot of people didn't understand that, right? So SAP has built in this flexibility. It's important to look at your controls. What's a source document for booking invoices? Because typically, once a liability gets booked, the payment happens thereafter seamless. So please make sure that only approved invoices gets in. I highly recommend the three-way matching. Make sure that that's in place. Segregation of duties. And SAP transaction code access based on defined role matrix. Our organization invested a lot of time to ensure that we created these different roles and that there was segregation built into this. And the moment someone has, say, an AR role and an AP role, that this is immediately flagged, and only someone with higher authorization could approve that as an exception. Right, so look at building in segregation of duties through your SAP roles. Make sure authorization for credit notes. A company I know, they had a big fraud because these credit notes appear to have been played around with. Fraud detection software. Do you have a fraud detection software working on top of SAP? We do. It's called ForestSpin, screenshot of ForestSpin, and this sits on top of SAP, and any anomaly, duplications, unusual transactions, it'll look at the last 3 years transactions, and there are outliers, it will immediately flag it to the CFO and the CEO with an email. So what it means is that your audits are happening instantaneously rather than once a year. It's also happening on the entire population rather than on a sample. Who has access for reversal and mass reversal? Please check this out because you don't want someone reversing transactions without the proper authorization. Now come to reports. Are all your standard financial statements extracted from SAP, or are they out of the system workarounds? Are there spreadsheets, right? Because be mindful, it can be manipulated by accident or by design, right? If your statements are coming out on spreadsheets, people can then change it around or bring in formulas. How do you ensure the sanctity of your financial statements, accuracy of your information? Our product profitability, client profitability analysis, and divisional profitability directly taken from SAP. It can provide all of this. Look at integration with Power BI or Tableau or whatever visual analytical tool that you are using? Can procurement quantities and spend analysis be extracted directly from SAP for negotiating contracts with suppliers? Is consolidated information for a group of companies available directly on SAP? So good questions to ask yourself. We worked with a big company in Australia, they're in the agribusiness, and their managing director asked us this question. He said, I would like my finance division to be world-class in a year's time. Right, so we went back and researched what is world-class in a finance division. And Hackett, APQC, PwC, a lot of these have released extensive reports where they have a series of benchmarks which define what is a world-class standard. For instance, in the accounts payable process, you have the percentage of PO-based invoices, percentage of electronic invoices, month-end closure, the number of days, finance cost per transaction, finance cost as a percentage of revenue, your defect rate. Now, in each of these cases, there is a world-class standard, debtor days, creditor days, invoice to pay cycle times. Right, so what we did in this case is we baseline where they were. And then we had a series of interventions, process improvements, automation initiatives. And after 1 year, we were able to demonstrate that we met or exceeded some of these world-class benchmarks, right? Here are some screenshots of what Hackett does. You can see the world-class indicator and the peer rating and how the world-class companies significantly outperform in each of these indicators, their peers. Intelligent automation and now AI. Have you done any projects with RPA, projects with AI? Today, still people are not 100% clear on how they know that AI is seismic, it's going to have a significant impact. But in the finance profession, with SAP, how it's going to impact, people aren't very sure. So some of the things I've seen is AI mentors for training people, new people in the organization. Then you have an AI buddy, which reminds you of creditor days, of due payments, of due collections, of any risks. Then you have automatic matching of GL accounts and proposal of GL accounts and cost centers based on machine learning. These are some of the ongoing uses of RPA and AI that are in use today. So the root causes of failures of some of the SAP projects: user discipline, lack of training, rushed implementation, and not allocating adequate resources, wrong choice of consultants, not given adequate priority by the business, no champion driving continuous improvement. Now, this is something I would really like to encourage. Have a champion in your business who is continually looking at continuous improvement, driving change, driving best practices, driving automation. It doesn't happen in a day. It doesn't happen after implementation. You're not going to end up with a perfect implementation. There are going to be gaps. You need someone thinking about it and ensuring that they get the ROI that was envisaged. Otherwise, you'll end up with an incomplete system and users find their way. You know, they'll bring in a spreadsheet here, they'll bring in a workaround here, some way to manage, and then you end up with suboptimal use of your ERP system. You don't get the best. You are certainly not achieving the dream or the vision that you had when you started off. Right? So look at trained users or work with a partner who has trained users. Have a champion driving continuous improvement, because you've invested a lot, right? You've invested millions in your SAP system. You must make sure that you get what you envisaged. So shared services and expert partner could help you in this journey, right? So here are some tips. If you're working with a shared services partner, identify repetitive processes, set up your own shared service, or work with a center of excellence, or work with another expert partner who can help you on this journey. Document. Make sure that you have detailed documentations, give some thought and planning to the transition. And use your internal team for business partnering, high-end analytics, right? Now, finance people, we are trained, and Brandon will speak more about this. We are looking at finance business partnering. You're looking at the finance person and the division being the principal advisor. You're talking of predictive analysis. I was listening to someone who called the CFO the Chief Future Officer, the Chief Future Officer, someone who advises the business. But the reality is far from this. We are often firefighting, caught up with transactions, with audit queries from supplier calls, right? So you must aim to elevate your finance team, your CFO, to be able to actually focus on what's really important for the business, advising the business. So here's how you can ensure you get your ROI: manage your costs, user licenses, new modules, look at it critically. Ensuring centralization, a group of expert users will help you. User discipline will definitely help you. Monitor your staff numbers, right? Make sure that there isn't scope creep. Continuous improvement is key. Look at automation opportunities, right? And I think it is from the analytics, from the insights, from the decisions that you can really reap the benefits of SAP. SAP is a fantastic system, as I said. There's a lot of insights that you can get. You can really use it as a tool to manage your cost, to predict, to forecast, to advise the business, look at pricing strategies, cost rationalization initiatives. That's where you're really going to get. Many people don't come there. They're too caught up just in the transaction processing and the closures. Just before I close, a little bit about Infomate. Infomate was the first shared services in Sri Lanka 20 years ago. Soon after we implemented SAP in the John Keells group, they set up Infomate to bring about centralized standardization, centralized governance, process improvements, and controls across this vast John Keells group. We work on a variety of platforms, SAP obviously being the area we have the most amount of expertise, but also on Oracle and so many other systems. And we specialize in helping business with access to talent and also in process expertise. So you will see a lot of the finance processes, procure to pay, order to cash, fixed asset management, record to report, and the analytics and the reporting. We have a global client base. And a few of the client comments that we are very, very proud of, we have made gains across the board in the finance function, including productivity, accuracy, and processing times. Infomate is not a basic outsourcing provider. They're constantly looking for value add and new ways they can help lift our finance activities to world's best practice. Also, from a Fortune 500 company, we appreciate the hard work and commitment of the entire team at Infomate. We feel that our finance has an extended family at Infomate. Thank you very much indeed. I hope that was helpful and happy to discuss. Brandon, over to you.
Lovely. Thanks, Jehan. That was a great presentation, and it's such a huge body of knowledge, around SAP, to be able to sort of bring that down into a half-an-hour presentation. It was very interesting and engaging. So, yeah, then thanks for that. And what we're going to do for the next half an hour is just really go through a question and answers, bit of a conversation between us, just to talk through some of the insights that you've put in there, but also a little bit more about Infomate, about offshoring and outsourcing and Sri Lanka and things like that. So we've got a lot of conversation having in a short period of time, but we'll try and give the listeners a bit of an insight into all things around what you're involved in. So so look, I've known you for what, 10 or 12 years at this stage, Jehan. Maybe share a little bit about your career there. You've been 20 years at Infomate as the CEO or thereabouts, and you do a lot in the voluntary space in accounting and in chambers of commerce and things like that. Maybe just tell the listeners a little bit about your background or your career.
No, thanks for that, Ben, and thank you for the kind comment. So my background is in accounting. I did CIMA first and then ACCA. And in fact, that's how I got to know you through my association with ACCA. I still remember coming to Australia and meeting the country head. And you were not in the country at that time. He said, you must meet Brendan Sheehan, and I'm very grateful that made the introduction.
That was John Winter, that's right, Jay. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So with the accounting background that I had, I joined the John Keells group 28 years ago. So I've been in one company my entire career. And I think the pivotal moment for me is being part of the SAP implementation core team way back in 2004. So that opened the whole world of SAP for me. And then when they set up shared services in 2005 and they incorporated Infomate as a legal entity to operate the shared services. They selected me as a senior manager, and since then I've moved on to become CEO. So I've been with Infomate. Next year is our 20th anniversary. We've seen it grow from 60 to nearly 600 people. We started off as a shared services serving our parent company. Today, 77% of our revenue, nearly 80%, is third party. So we serve leading companies. We've taken the expertise that we got by serving our parent company now to the world. We started off by serving large corporates in Sri Lanka, and now we've moved on to serving leading companies in Australia, in Europe, US, and Saudi Arabia, the Nordics. So very, very satisfying career. It's been, I think, one of the most satisfying aspects is helping companies. And I believe in making a difference through business, right? So it's very gratifying to see that we can help our company, our clients with access to talent, with access to process efficiencies, automation, help them free up their mind to really concentrate on what's most important. And it's also gratifying to see the number of careers that Infomate has been able to develop and grow, and a lot of them are holding top finance positions in Sri Lanka and overseas. So it's been a good run, and we did a few things on the theme of making a difference through business. We pioneered the concept of rural BPM, creating rural jobs. 60% of those employed in Infomate are women. And we do some great projects with children's charities, giving them career and life skills. So it's been a good career, and I'm looking forward to the next decade.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, you just talked about the 600 or so people that you have working there now, and you look at over 20 years, the amount of people who have gone through and passed on and gone on to other organizations and got other opportunities. And as you say, they're sort of moving up. So there must be 12, 1,300 people have gone through there, if not more, over the years.
Yes,
so
yes.
it's an amazing feat to see all those people and to have you know, been part of their career journey, and for them to have been part of Infomate's journey as well must be fascinating. There was a lot of what you were talking about there in your presentation was striking me. You know, you were talking about SAP, obviously, right? And Infomate are offshore business process outsourcing experts, and I love your tagline. You know, your extended workforce overseas. But you know, when you're talking about SAP, there, it's very similar advice you could give around the offshoring journey. You know, I think you were talking a lot there about processes and not being tied to your processes, and looking at that change experience as an opportunity maybe to think differently about how you approach your processes. And one of the things that was coming through my mind as we were talking about was this, there's an old phrase called paving the cow paths, you know, where people take that process that they've always done and they just automate that process. And actually, it's probably better if you stand back from the process a little bit and say, maybe we could do this differently. And I think something like SAP, for sure, an implementation of a system of that nature or that size or complexity, and an offshoring exercise gives you the opportunity to look at things differently and take the advice and expertise from your implementation partner or from your offshore business partner to know what's best practice, what works best. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that in the offshoring sense. How do you find that experience with clients?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head, because a lot of the companies that have reached out to us, they realize that this is not their area of expertise. Right? They are very good at the agriculture business or in real estate or in hospitality business. That's their area of expertise. And also, if you today see the finance professionals today, the type of knowledge that they have, they are looking at analytics, they're looking at big data, they are looking at advisory services, they're looking at predictive analysis. That's where they want to be, right? And today, a lot of the finance people have moved on from the transaction processing areas, which are sort of less exciting. But the fact is that you still need to have that as your base. Now, if you want to do data science, AI, you need to have good, clean data. So someone has to do that, right? You still need to comply with your audits, with your compliance requirements. You need to ensure suppliers are paid, your bank reconciliations are done, your fixed assets are protected. You are still finance professionals, right? So they've reached out to us and said, this is not our area of expertise. We've got this system. We're probably not using the best to its best potential. Can you help us? And that's where we've been able to help them. First, we go in, we have our process excellence team. We document what we call the as-is. We look at benchmarking against some of the international best practices. We look at a gap analysis. And then we have our talent. Right now, today, access to talent is becoming a huge issue. When I was in Australia a couple of years ago, last year, in fact, we walked into a CFO conference and just speaking to some of the CFOs. Every one of them mentioned access to talent as their top three problems, top three challenges. Right, the war for talent is upon us. So Sri Lanka has a rich pool of accounting talent. We have one of the highest pools of UK qualified accountants in the world outside the UK. Right? It's not a large country, but we seem to have had a abundance of finance professionals. So COVID has taught us, you can really collaborate across regions, and that work can be done from anywhere. And you can access talent pools around the world. So today you have tech people, for instance, being digital nomads, going and working from all around the world, and people are now comfortable that this model works. So since then, we've actually had an increase in inquiries and people saying, can you help us with process, with documentation? A CFO that you work with said, for the first time, I've got a detailed set of documentation of all of my processes. Right? So they realize that this is not my area of specialty. Let me work with a partner who can help me.
Yeah, you just cast my mind back to when we first connected. There was actually, it was around the time that John Winter introduced you to me, but there had been an article on the front of the Financial Review in Australia, the Australian Financial Review paper, with Jamie Packer was on it. He had been over in Sri Lanka talking with the government about setting up a casino complex hotel, and probably very close to where John Keells Group are located. But the article on the page, on the front of the Fin Review, was a quote from him saying that Sri Lanka is the next big outsourcing destination. And that really got me interested in it. And the thing, the competitive advantage for Sri Lanka is the fact that you've got a incredible talent pool of accountants there, and it's UK qualified accountants as well. So I think there's some statistic that as a per head of capita, there's more UK qualified accountants in Sri Lanka than anywhere else in the world outside of the UK. And it's similar with Australia. Over here, we're obviously it's a UK based legal and tax system, so has its origins there for sure. Anyway, so it's similar accounting standards and similar sort of style of accounting reporting that is done around that. So yeah, it's a real wealth of talent in that finance space within Sri Lanka. So yeah, call out to everybody out there, if you're looking for an accountant, if you've got a shortage of talent in Australia, Sri Lanka is the place to look if you're looking for some alternative sources. But just quickly to go to the ACCA, and it's picking up on something you said there around the data. ACCA's recent report that they did with PwC and Chartered Accountants ANZ was talking about the future of the finance function. And they were saying that there is a real demand. The future of finance is all about supporting organizations in long-term value creation, and they have to have deep specialization in different areas, and they have to be able to influence outcomes. But there's prerequisites around that, and they seem to be around hyper automation of processes. So we stop doing the mundane transaction processing, bean counting work. And then the second one is to build trust around data. So build that integrity in data. And I think what you've touched on there is really key to that. Process improvement is about automation, it's about efficiency, and I think that transition into a new system or into a new resourcing model, whether it's a different part of your own business or whether it's offshore, it gives you that opportunity to look at those and bring those SLAs, KPIs, and things like that, and look at how do we make things a bit better, a bit faster, and look at the data that is happening underneath that. So I think, yeah, have you any insights into what you've seen in the ACCA report about how you can help organizations in that regard?
Yes, so definitely, I think AI is going to be the future, and it's going to have a significant impact. We hosted the AI conference in Sri Lanka a couple of weeks ago that was powered by Deloitte. We had some senior Deloitte executives coming down to Sri Lanka and talking about their experience. I was talking to one of them who heads their edge unit in Singapore, and he said the world has not yet woken up to the seismic change that AI is going to have in 5 years' time. And it's going to be really transformational. It's going to probably, we are not going to see it happen immediately. And if you look at some of the automation initiatives that have happened, some of that has met our expectations, some of it hasn't. But the sense that we're having from ACCA reporting plus speaking to several of the experts is that AI is a real deal, and this is going to be a game changer. So my recommendation, and this was borne out in the conference as well, is to start trialing some small initiatives. So what we are doing in the organization, we are trying to train our entire staff, right? Equip them with the knowledge. And the use cases will follow. So it's not going to be like an ERP project. It's not going to be this one big AI project, right? It's going to be an evolution of lots of little things. So start today, start small, start experimenting with learning systems, with, for instance, large language models in your own organization. Start trialing some of these things. We've asked a few AI companies to come down and start presenting what they have to us so that we start getting our thoughts. I think it's important that we start now, start small, but start. So that's the overwhelming sense that I have. Get the basics right. I think for, as you said, for data science, for AI to work, you must have your foundation firmly in place, right? So that's where I think it's very important that the data quality, the accuracy, your documentation, how you're capturing information, bring in good discipline controls, but that's going to be your foundation. If that's not in place, you really can't build on top of that. And I've spoken to a lot of data science experts, and there are some very good companies there in Sri Lanka, and they are really struggling with data. And I'm sure a lot of the companies that you work with also have this challenge, right? Because if you don't have that, you really can't do much. I'm doing a test case, a pilot at the moment with a company that has given us the opportunity to look at anomalies, to look at duplications in their whole procure-to-pay process, right? So we're using some AI tools for that. And so things like that can be done today. Let's grab the opportunity. Let's not wait, because very quickly things can move, and then you can find that you're left. Right. Yeah. So it's important to keep reading and start trialing.
Yeah, for sure. We did a webinar there last week with Infotech, the technology research group, and during the conversation, we were talking about, you know, the pace of change that's happening as a result of AI, and you know, there was a bit of a sort of a pause moment where it actually, AI isn't, the pace is not going to be as fast maybe as people think. There's certainly a lot of hype around it, and everybody's got that little AI app that's associated with their products, and even SAP has some AI capability built into their systems. But the infrastructure is not ready for it yet. So it's a little bit like how when the internet came first, it was sort of, there's a slow curve until all of a sudden the infrastructure is ready, and then it'll go off in a big pace. So what you said about sort of, you know, 3 to 5 years, I think that's a really solid timeline to be looking at. So the opportunity now is to be finding those use cases, experimenting, getting used to the technology, building capacity in your team to be able to look at the way the use case for AI around processes. And this is coming back to me a little bit in the way we were talking about earlier on about your documenting your processes. The best thing about documenting your process, we're not talking about putting in reams and reams and reams of paper here, but the best thing about looking and analyzing and understanding your processes is that you start to see what can be standardized, what are the exceptions, what has the opportunity to be automated in some way, and then take that down a bit further. Could that potentially be solved through AI? And I think, you know, the decision-making process around AI, the advice that we've been getting a lot is to say, don't look at it with an AI lens, look at it through the statement of the problem statement. What's the problem we're trying to solve here first? And then you figure out what's the right solution. And maybe AI is the right solution, but in a lot of the cases right now, it's not. Sometimes it could be, let's get this done by a lower cost resource with higher capability in a location like Sri Lanka, or it could be, let's get an API for SAP to work between this system and this system. It could be something like that. So I think the theme of what we're talking about here is change gives you an opportunity to refine your processes and to look critically at those processes. And I think as the accounting function evolves over the next few years, as ACCA talks about it, you get that opportunity to automate your processes, get better quality data, and then use that to drive better decision making throughout the business. So I'm going to come to that end of the spectrum in terms of what you guys provide. So you showed some Power BI slides there with some metrics, some benchmarking metrics. You provide capability at the higher end of that scale. You provide some insight reporting and some business partnering support to an extent to clients around the world. So would you like to talk about that?
Sure. So when we started off, it was primarily in the high volume, more repetitive activities, more transactional space, but we've gradually gone up the value chain. So now we are doing things like reporting, and where we really are very strong is in reporting on process. We help our customers to understand their own process. We do that through our documentation, through the dashboards that report on volumes, on every aspect of performance, right? For instance, turnaround times, from the time that you submit an invoice or transaction to the time that it's posted. You're looking at accuracy, reporting on accuracy, on productivity. These are very important stats and that help people understand how their process, the health of their process, right? What we are now working on is insights. What we see is a lot of companies today are looking at value adds, not just plain or vanilla outsourcing, but they're looking at insights. And that's how we're looking at the next couple of years of adding value to our customers through insights. So that would include, for instance, reporting on controls, on ERP best practices that they are possibly not fully using, looking at other recommendations regarding risks, right? Risk is a very, very important element in finance, and also automation suggestions, where technology could be used, where a workflow system could be used, where supplier training could be used, where a supplier portal could be used.
So you're using the data and the process activity that you're doing to create value for your clients on an ongoing basis. It's not just literally a transaction that you're going through. You're looking at ways to make their business more efficient, to reduce risk, and potentially to look for opportunities to get better outcomes or outputs from their systems. And I think we've talked about this in the past, that the value in an offshoring arrangement is not about the labor arbitrage anymore. It's actually about getting the most out of your investment in those resources and getting maximizing the productivity. And I think what you've done is taken it to the next level, where you're able to identify opportunities to improve the productivity in your clients' businesses. So I think I'm thinking about things like real estate as an example. You're able to look for opportunities to help improve the productivity of property managers, as an example, by looking at what they do, where they spend their time.
Absolutely. And ultimately, it's helping them to really focus on what's most important, right? Bringing in revenue into their companies, managing their costs better. There's a company that we were working in the UK. We were helping their salespeople, about 50 plus sales team. So all of their credit checks, identity checks, CRM updates that they need to do as part of the admin and housekeeping, they showed it to us. So we were able to then handle this work for them, so that they actually had more time with customers, more time to win business. I think that's an aspect that we are very, very passionate about. And just on Sri Lanka, Brandon, you touched on that a couple of times, right? So Sri Lanka is called a hidden gem for offshoring. That was a statement by A.T. Kearney. The Australian had this quote: "Some countries have oil, others have vast deposits of ore, and Sri Lanka's contribution to global outsourcing is accountants.
That's
Thousands of
right.
them ready to crunch the world's numbers, right? So very strong endorsement. It's called a hidden gem because probably we've not done a good enough job in telling the story. So we are trying to redress that. We've had a lot of success stories. London Stock Exchange has a big center here. So the technology that powers London, Boston, New York, built and supported right here. IFS, which is the big ERP competitor to SAP and Oracle, has the biggest global workforce in Sri Lanka. You've got WNS, you've got HSBC, which has 3,000 people here. HCL Technologies is here. You've got Cisco, the world's biggest food company, Fortune company, 56, having a strong base here, 1,000+ people. I heard one of the senior executives down from the US. He said, this is some of the best talent he's seen, best talent anywhere in the world. Right? So very strong endorsements from those who've experienced Sri Lanka. So we want to ride off that, right? So it's about, and what you said about the motivations for outsourcing, you're absolutely right. It was initially arbitrage, then access to talent, but today it's about value. It's about value additions, it's about insights, it's about process.
Very good. And Sri Lanka is not a bad place to go and visit as well. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what you can see in Sri Lanka, and then I think you've got a standing offer arrangement for anybody who wants to come and visit your service centers over in Sri Lanka. So yeah, tell us a little bit about what people can expect to see when they go over there.
Sure. So Sri Lanka is really going through a renaissance, complete change. You've got brand new government, political stability, sort of a wave of positive optimism now in the country. All of the economic indicators are now very, very positive. We got a very glowing tribute from the IMF a few days ago. And from a tourism standpoint, it's becoming a global hotspot. We've been ranked as the best location in the world for solo female travelers, several other accolades. I think one of the top 3 or 5 places to visit before you die. We've been highly ranked by Forbes, by CNN, by several others. We're having record levels of tourism. Next year, we are expected to have nearly 3 million tourists, lots of great new hotels opening up. And it's one of the best places for wildlife, for instance, leopard spotting. You've got elephants, blue whales, bird watching paradise, great cuisine. Some of the Australian MasterChef contestants were Sri Lankan expats, and they've really taken Sri Lankan food to the world. And warm smiles, very, very friendly people, great beaches, lovely warm weather. So a lot of our customers who come down for work fall in love with the country. I have a Norwegian client. He's now become a great personal friend. He's been here 20 times.
Yeah, wow. This sorry, yeah, there's I can't remember what the name of the place is, but it's like this basically a village or a kingdom, I would say, that's sitting on the top of a rock. I would love to visit that.
Absolutely.
What's that called?
It's called Sigiriya. It's the 8th wonder of the world. It was a pleasure palace built by one of our kings of old. And it really has some remarkable feats of architecture which still astonish scientists and engineers today. How they, the solid rock high up, how they did a irrigation and a water system to pump it right up. There are some frescoes which date back several thousand years, which are still crystal clear. Some amazing features of feats of science and engineering. And on the offer that you said, now, if we have anyone who is seriously looking at doing business with us, we make it easy for them to explore. Right? So if they're willing to fly in, we take care of the expenses on the ground here. Right? So we have the John Keells Group is heavily invested in tourism. We're the largest owner of hotel rooms in the country. So we take care of the expectation. We arrange a curated program for them to explore. So that includes meeting with Infomate staff, visit to our facility. Seeing is believing, right? Then meeting with members of our government, with the industry, with the academia, so they can really satisfy themselves and see for themselves the talent, the sort of syllabus content, some of the companies that are working here, the infrastructure, very strong telco and electricity, with very strong backups. Sri Lanka has 10 submarine cables in and around shores. So giving us very strong disaster recovery capability. So we had zero downtime throughout COVID and We went through a fairly challenging period of economic crisis. Throughout all of that, all of our customers said they did not see any change in their deliverables.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm sure listeners will get their own tax advice on this, but that sounds like a very valuable and wholly tax deductible business expense if they were to come over and have a look at
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
Infomate shared services centers on the back of making sure that the location that it's in is got well-being and supports the employees of
Absolutely.
Infomate, their
Absolutely.
extended workforce overseas.
Absolutely. I mean, values are very, very important to us. And that's
Yes,
something
yes.
that you will find that the values that you cherish and that the people in Australia and in the West hold dear are the same values that we uphold, including our passion and our commitment to the environment, sustainability, ESG, diversity and inclusivity. These are things that we hold very dear to our hearts.
Beautiful. Okay, we're nearly up on time, Jehan, but so if anybody who's listening into this on YouTube wants to find out more, how can they get in touch?
So they could write to, we have a, let me just bring up the
Yeah, the last slide on your deck
slide.
probably has most of the information on it there.
So do please scan the QR code. And
Yeah.
you've also got the info at Infomate World, our website, infomateworld.com. Please find us on LinkedIn or on any social media, and we'd love to have a chat. We have a presence in Australia as well. So you have the comfort of knowing that you'll be very well taken care of both in Australia and in Sri Lanka. And why not fly down and see for yourselves?
Sounds great. Okay, Jehan, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. And thanks for your presentation on SAP. It was a very insightful run through years of experience dealing with a very complex product. And I know your team over there are very skilled in dealing with SAP in your own environment, but also on many client environments as well. So it's one of your core strengths, I think, in Infomate. So yeah, reach out, say hello, find out a bit more about Infomate, and we'll see you the next time.
Thank you, Brandon, and thank you all. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Jehan.